Frank Nazar finally gets called up.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, Blackhawks fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, just a quick reminder to please go and hit that like button for me. Jump in the comment section down below as well. His Mailbag Monday is right around the corner, so make sure to hit me with your Blackhawks-related questions. If you're tuning in through an audio platform, an easy way to reach out with those questions is by just dropping them in the review section, preferably along with a 5-star rating. Those are always great. And make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube, especially if you're as pumped as I am that Frank Nazar has finally earned his NHL call-up. I'll be talking a lot about Frank Nazar, Kevin Korchinski, who's up in the NHL scene right now as well, and Connor Bedard finally starting to find his groove once again. A lot more on Locked On Blackhawks here over these next couple of weeks, as it seems like there's actually some fun and energy surrounding this club now that Anders Sorensen has taken over. Last but certainly not least, briefly got to shout out today's sponsor, which is FanDuel. Go and check out FanDuel.com to win $150 worth of bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins with America's #1 sportsbook. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Hope everyone's Friday is off to a wonderful start thus far. I know my Friday is, and that's because Blackhawks top prospect Frank Nazar finally got called up this morning. I'm as excited as I've been in quite a while to do this podcast here today, Blackhawks fans, and that's because I've had my hitch tied to Frank Nazar ever since the Blackhawks selected him 13th overall in 2022. For those of you who have been longtime viewers and listeners of the show, then you probably remember Hadi Kalikesh, part of the Locked On NHL Prospects podcast, and also does some really good stuff for elite prospects as well. Has come on the show multiple times and talked about how much he loves Frank Nazar's game, and it's been a lot of fun following him along his journey that's gotten him to this point right here, right now, these past couple of years. Just as a reminder, do want to bring up that the Blackhawks received the 13th overall selection as part of the Kirby Dach trade at the 2022 NHL draft, which I'm sure many of you remember as well, was quite the eventful day for our Blackhawks. Nazar went on from the United States Development Program, where the Blackhawks drafted him, to the University of Michigan in college hockey. Sadly, though, my boy's freshman campaign was cut short, missed most of the season due to a knee injury, and there were some rumblings out there, some concerns that Frank Nazar was never going to be the same player after that injury. He put all of that to bed real quick with a massive sophomore campaign, 41 points in 41 games to help lead the Michigan Wolverines to a Frozen Four berth. Also was part of the United States World Juniors team, last winner that won the gold medal, and he was over a point per game there with 8 assists actually in 7 games played. And then once the year wrapped up with Michigan, we saw Nazar make his NHL debut with the Blackhawks, got in 3 games of action at the end of the season, and in his NHL debut, in his first ever shot on goal, Frank Nazar found the back of the net for his first NHL tunk. And some of you may remember, I know I've said that a couple of times already here on today's show, but Jonathan Toews, another Blackhawks great, also scored in his very first game and his very first shot on goal. I thought that was just kind of a little bit of an odd connection there. But it's been a marvelous last couple of years for Frank Nazar. Unfortunately, he didn't wind up making the Blackhawks NHL roster out of camp in the fall, as he had a little bit of a shaky preseason. But hey, that seemed to only put a bigger chip on his shoulder down in the AHL with Rockford, as he's been not only the best player for the IceHogs, but one of the best players in the entire league as a rookie. 24 points in his first 21 AHL games, 11 goals and 13 assists, 6th in the league in scoring, first among all rookies, leads the IceHogs in goals, points, and assists. He's doing it all right now. He's been an absolute menace, and yeah, seems like finally forced the front office's hand. The reason that I think it did happen now, though, even though Nazar has been performing rather well all season long from start to finish. He's been the best player for the Rockford IceHogs. I think there are a slew of reasons why the call-up finally happened right here, right now. First and foremost, a big part of it is because Andrew Sorensen is now the Blackhawks interim head coach. Not only is he familiar with Frank Nazar's style of play and knows how to get him going. I mean, he was his top line center for the opening 21 games here this year. He's familiar with him from development camps and training camps these last couple of years. But we've also heard that Andrew Sorensen very vocally during his introductory presser as the Blackhawks interim said that he's going to be prioritizing the kids. So with that mentality now leading this Blackhawks bunch, it allowed a path for Frank Nazar to come up to the NHL level. And I don't think that was there under Luke Richardson's guide, because the Blackhawks were just so limited offensively. And, you know, we had seen kind of Richardson's style do negative things and have a negative impact upon Lucas Reichel. That was the last thing we wanted to have happen with Frank Nazar. So Richardson being out, and also the Blackhawks responding pretty well in these first three games and at least generating more offensively and looking like an actual capable offensive bunch, that certainly has aided in Frank Nazar's call up as well, or the opportunity to be called up. I also wonder if what I talked about on yesterday's episode, and definitely go and check out yesterday's show if you haven't already, Blackhawks fans, because I mentioned a side effect of firing Luke Richardson in the midway point of the season and having Sorensen depart from Rockford and come up to the NHL level is it's left the IceHogs in a very precarious position. They're 0-2-1 over their past three games. Blackhawks assistant general manager Mark Eaton is currently serving as their interim head coach. The IceHogs have only scored one goal total in that three-game stretch. Nazar was on a three-game pointless drought, so I do wonder if perhaps the Hawks felt it was better for Nazar to be up at the NHL level under Sorensen's leadership than for him to be at the AHL level with everything that's going down there right now. And as I really kind of hammered home yesterday, I think there is a little bit of a looming problem going on down there. Hopefully the IceHogs will be able to get back on track this weekend and pick up a big win or two to kind of get things back on track here. But yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on, and a side effect that not a lot of people are talking about with Andrew Sorensen having to be called up to the big leagues. Sorensen's style of play also should fit Nazar's game marvelously. I mean, we saw how well it was working for him down at the AHL level, and also, like I mentioned a moment ago, with the Blackhawks offense actually starting to click, starting to show some progress. And I know they only had 4 goals total in 3 games under Sorensen until that 3-goal outburst late in the game to make things interesting against the Islanders last night. But even more so than that, just how they're going about things, it feels night and day compared to where they were offensively under Luke Richardson. So that certainly helps in allowing Nazar to come up right here, right now. I also do wonder if the possibility of giving Connor Bedard more help led to Nazar finally getting called up, not just in the sense that Frank Nazar could possibly play the wing along with Connor Bedard on the same line. I don't think that's going to happen right away. I do think they want Frank Nazar playing the center ice position. That's where he was basically the entire time he was down in Rockford. And spoiler alert, as I'll be getting into during segment 3, he is slated to play the second line center spot tomorrow. So I'm not just talking about the possibility of him playing with Connor Bedard, but bringing in another center who can actually play an offensive style and provide offense for this group can allow someone like Ryan Donato to possibly go up there and be on the same line with Connor Bedard, because Philip Kurashev, Ilya Mikheyev, they haven't been getting it done enough. Connor Bedard, with one of his better games of the season last night, despite not getting a whole lot of help out of those two guys, I think that could have played a part in it as well. But the biggest thing I think Blackhawks fans is this front office, they finally felt like Frank Nazar was ready to come up to the NHL level and stay. And I just mentioned Lucas Reichel a moment ago. What the Blackhawks didn't want to have happen with Nazar or any of their high-end prospects, particularly first-round picks. Kevin Korchinski is a little bit of a different situation because of injuries on the back end, but I think they really wanted to wait to call up Nazar until they felt like he was ready to fully mesh and stick around at the NHL scene. They didn't want to call him up for 7 or 8 games and worry about him possibly not performing well. They have to go and send him back down to the AHL level. It feels like they're really confident that he's going to come in and make an impact and also kind of be a real solution to the lack of center depth and the speed issue that this Blackhawks forward group has as a whole. Again, I don't think they were going to do that if they didn't feel positive about calling up Frank Nazar, because you don't want to be calling up your top prospects for help. If you're not 100% sure, you don't want to call them up for help if it's still a little bit of a gamble. You want to call them up when you're 100% sure. That seems like the path that Kyle Davidson has wanted to go down with his prospects, that they're the ones who are going to tell the front office when they're ready to go up. And it feels like Frank Nazar, with his play, not only, like I mentioned, being the best player for the IceHogs, but just being one of the best players in the entire AHL, outside of the NHL, one of the most competitive and best leagues in the entire world. And he was absolutely thriving. So I think that all kind of played a part into Frank Nazar ultimately getting a call up right here, right now, Blackhawks fans. As far as what we can expect out of Nazar in his first NHL call up, I know it won't be his NHL debut or his first stint, but it is his first official call up from the IceHogs. The biggest thing we can expect out of Nazar is he's another player who can play with pace, enter the offensive zone with speed, and make plays happen. The Blackhawks just don't have enough of those players. They got Connor Bedard, they got Lucas Reichel, and I will continue to preach to give number 73. Pat Maroon's getting enough ice time as it is. Not really though, but I will continue to preach giving number 73, Lucas Reichel, more ice time until it happens, because he's one of the few players who can play through transition and lug the mail into the offensive zone. Ilya Mikheyev, I will give him credit. And a reason I've said in the past couple of shows why I don't hate the idea of him on the top line with Bedard as much as some other people may is, and we've seen it. There have been clear examples of him making nice plays, skating into the offensive zone, and then turning, pirouetting, and keeping his head up and finding a trailer or an open passing lane to make a nice play. He does unfortunately lack just high-level offensive abilities, and especially the finishing power. Like, I'm pretty sure he's still stuck on one goal for the season, but his skating ability and the way that he could get pucks to Connor Bedard, I think, was a reason why Sorensen gave him an opportunity on the top line. But like I mentioned, he lacks legitimate offensive capability. Nice to see that Taylor Hall is starting to pick it up, but adding Frank Nazar to the lineup gives the Blackhawks more speed, which they desperately need as much as they can get right here, right now. And just another guy who can drive play for his line in this Blackhawks offense. So that's desperately been needed, and I'm excited to see how Frank Nazar is going to fill that gap on the second line. Nazar, what we can also expect from him is someone who competes hard and wants to play a 200-foot game. The effort, the hustle, the motor, they're always on full display. He's not a perfect defensive player, but he always makes an effort out there. He's a hard worker. Despite not having the best size, he never stops that. He never lets that stop him from getting into the dirty areas and mixing it up and standing up for himself. He'll throw a check out there every now and again. Just works hard, man. A guy that I think a lot of Blackhawks fans are going to like, not only because what he can do on the offensive side of things, but also because of his hustle and effort defensively too. And I think a big thing that he's going to provide for the Blackhawks offense is being a dual threat player. He's always going to be more of a playmaker than a goal scorer, I think, at the NHL level, but I love to see the goal scoring development we've seen from Nazar so far this year, going back to his sophomore season with Michigan in college hockey in 41 NCAA games, and that's including the tournaments, the Frozen Four as well. Nazar had 17 goals in his sophomore season, and that was a nice uptick, I would say, in terms of what I wanted to see from him that year in the goal-scoring categories. 11 goals for Frank Nazar in his opening 21 AHL games. He's someone who can shoot and pass, and I think his desire to shoot the puck, again, more of a playmaker, but a very strong confidence, it seems, right now with the goal-scoring, willingness to shoot the puck. Blackhawks need to be getting as many pucks as they can on net, along with his speed in the 200-foot play. There's a lot to love with Frank Nazar. That's why I am as excited as I am for him to make his season debut on Saturday. Really hope it's gonna go swimmingly for Frank Nazar. Make sure to jump in the comment section down below and let me know your thoughts on Frank Nazar getting called up here on Friday morning. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, I will talk about what we can, or where we can expect to see Frank Nazar in the Blackhawks lineup against the Devils tomorrow. That's coming up in segment 3. Before I get to that, I do want to talk more about the Blackhawks' sloppy 5-4 loss to the New York Islanders last night. But first, I got to talk to you all about the fine folks over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the second half of the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and win $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. And the FanDuel Sportsbook app now gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place, so that when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can go and check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you also happen to place your bets. And the Chicago Bears, absolutely in the toilet right here, right now, not getting the interim head coaching boost last week against the Niners that I thought they were going to get. Might just be a good idea to fade the Chicago Bears the rest of the way. Lord knows the schedule isn't going to get any easier. And if you think that's the right strategy, make sure to go and jump on over to FanDuel.com. And if you're not already a member, you can win $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. I also got to talk to you real quick about Indeed. We're all driven by the search for better in this world, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, but match with Indeed. And if you need a hire, then you need Indeed, because Indeed is the best matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates in an instant. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. And one of the things that I enjoy about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place. So simple and so easy, because you can skip out on the countless job sites that ask unnecessary information and questions and still doesn't wind up leading you anywhere. Instead, go and join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that currently use Indeed to hire quality talent in an instant. And viewers and listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility when you check out Indeed.com/lockedon. Again, that's Indeed.com/lockedon. Need to hire? Then you need Indeed. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Real quick, wanted to say thank you to everyone for making Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your weekend. For your second listen, make sure you go and check out the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast. That way, you can become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. You can easily find the link to Locked On Fantasy Hockey down in the description, or search on YouTube and wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Segment 2, Blackhawks, as they typically do, got off to another great start last night in Long Island. Third game, by the way, under Anders Sorensen is the interim head coach. Blackhawks once again scored the opening goal. That's the 18th time they've done it now in 29 games this year, as Connor Bedard scored an absolute beauty of a highlight reel type of goal for his 6th tuck of the season. Nice little celebration along the glass as well, being like, oh yeah, you remember me. And I'll have more on Connor Bedard here coming up in just a moment. But that gave the Blackhawks a 1-0 advantage going into the second period. And I actually thought they did a good job of picking up where they left off in the front half of the second. The opening 30 minutes of the game was all Blackhawks. They limited the Islanders to only 8 shots on goal, but it seemed like a dicey penalty call right around the midway point of the game on Philip Kurashev for goaltender interference, which I didn't agree with whatsoever. Sorokin was well out on top of the blue paint. Kurashev skating through the crease. He didn't know that Sorokin was going to be coming out that far, and I think he has the right to that ice as well. Goes against the Blackhawks. Kurashev off for goaltender interference. And I'm not someone who gripes about the officials. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago when I did a crossover with Seth Topal from Locked On Wild, and he was kind of saying the same thing, picking up what I was putting down, that the officials this year in the NHL, and I don't know if many of you viewers or listeners feel the same way that I do. If you do, make sure to go and let me know in the comment section right now. Feels like the NHL officiating, has been as bad as it's ever been. And I've always given credit to NHL officials for, out of the 4 major sports here in North America, I think they are by far the best of the bunch. But this year, man, it feels like a lot of calls not only have gone against the Blackhawks, but there's just been a lot of questionable calls as a whole. And this was certainly one against Philip Kurashev. And you can't blame the officials for this game turning around and the Islanders getting some wind after their in their sails there after this moment. Just literally seconds after Kurashev stepped out of the box, Dennis Chalowski blasts a slap shot past Arvid Soderblom to tie the game up 1-1. That felt like it kind of gave the Islanders some life when they were down and out through the opening 30 to 35 minutes. And what also really crushed the Blackhawks is Arvid Soderblom picked a tough time to sadly have his worst performance of the season, coming off arguably his best on Monday night against the New York Islanders. Another stellar performance that had his numbers phenomenal through his opening 8 starts of the year. Sadly, just didn't have his best stuff here in Long Island, as he was kind of fighting the puck all night long, never really looked comfortable or settled in net. He kind of looked scrambly, like the Arvid Soderblom we had seen the last couple of years. And I was really hoping we had kind of gotten rid of that guy, but he popped up last night. The Simone Holmstrom goal that put the Islanders ahead 2-1 late in the second period. Soderblom had no idea where the puck was, caught going right as the puck beats him left. And then early on in the third, Noah Dobson on a 2-on-1. Yeah, Wyatt Kaiser got caught pinching up ice. That'll happen when you're down a goal in the third period. Definitely was one that I think Arvid Soderblom would stop any other night with the way that he had been playing so far this season. Dobson sneaks one through his 5-hole, and that just opened up the floodgates for the Islanders, as that kickstarted a 3-goal stretch for them in 2 minutes and 19 seconds, put the Islanders ahead 5-1 out of nowhere. Blackhawks really, really shot themselves in the foot, especially considering the late charge they made to make things interesting. TJ Brodie with his first goal as a member of the Blackhawks, clapper from the point after a nice feed from Connor Bedard for his second goal of the game. And then how about Tyler Bertuzzi with 2 goals in exactly a minute's time to cut the Blackhawks deficit to 5-4 with 9 seconds left. Still wound up being too little too late, though, as the Blackhawks, unable to pick up back-to-back wins for the first time here in December, fall to 1-5-0 in 6 games here this month and are down to 9-18-2 through their opening 29 games. Thankfully, though, with all the action that went down in the third period, this was legitimately the polar opposite of what I thought we were going to get between the Blackhawks and Islanders, 2 of the most struggling offenses in the NHL, not only this year, but the last handful of seasons. I talked with multiple buddies and also Gil Martin, the host of Locked On Islanders, being like, we might be on the verge of a real snoozer on Thursday night when these two teams meet up. Fortunately, it wound up being the exact opposite. And hey, that gives me some good stuff to talk about here on today's show. Even though a lot of this production came in garbage time, it all counts the same. We got to start with number 98, Connor Bedard, though. Arguably his best performance of the year. He was everywhere. Absolutely dynamite first period in particular. 6th goal of the season. Primary assist on TJ Brodie's goal. 2nd assist on Tyler Bertuzzi's. 2nd tally. That now gives Bedard 11 points over his last 11 games, 9 points over his last 8, and 24 and 29 on the season as the Blackhawks leading scorer. And I know some of you remember a couple of weeks ago when I said Connor Bedard is going to be just fine. All the underlying numbers, the analytics, they're all pointing in the right direction. He just needs a little bit more help, needs to stop being so snake-bitten and get a little bit of puck luck. And we've seen that over the last couple of weeks. The kid's got his swagger back. He's got the confidence, the energy. He just looks so much different compared to what we had seen for the majority of month of November here so far, as the calendar has shifted over to December, and it is absolutely lovely to see. Hopefully, we'll be able to get him a little bit more help to truly capitalize on the nice play that he's been having here as of late, but it feels like Connor Bedard's got his swagger back, he's got his confidence back, and the rest of the league should absolutely be on watch because of that. Also great to see Taylor Hall. That is just terrible. Taylor Hall, Tyler Bertuzzi, nice to see them have another strong game. I mentioned that I wouldn't be surprised to see them start to put it together here after I think the Luke Richardson firing was a little bit of a look in the mirror for those two guys who I'm sure feel responsible for him being out of a job. Taylor Hall with a nice primary assist to set up Tyler Bertuzzi in his office for his first goal. Bertuzzi with a redirect again in the dirty areas for his second tally. That now gives him 8 goals on the year after 3 in his past 2 games. And it's not only the production, but it's just more so the eye test out of Tyler Bertuzzi. The amount of turnovers he's forcing by being the aggressor on the forecheck. It really feels like this style of play has opened up a lot more for he and Taylor Hall, someone who Halsey likes to play with pace, get on the offensive, skate into the offensive zone. He's been much better at that these last few games. And Tyler Bertuzzi has just been a bat out of hell. And I feel like Richardson's system was just holding him back a little bit. But the amount of turnovers that he's been forcing, getting goals in the dirty areas. I mentioned yesterday that we need to see more success from him in the crease, aka his office. 2 tallies from him in that area last night. Hopefully we can get some good mojo and confidence out of 59 and 71, because when those 2 guys are chipping in, it's a huge boost to this Blackhawks offense as a whole. Also want to give a shout out to Alex Vlasic. Had another 2 assists last night that now gives him 5 points over his past 7 games. Playing like 24 to 25 minutes a night with Seth Jones out on the back end. Truly developing into a number 1 defenseman in front of our eyes. And it is absolutely marvelous. Last little tidbit, though, that I have about the New York Islanders. It was kind of funny. After this game ended, considering the Blackhawks scored 2 goals in the final minute 10 and also had 3 goals in the final 9 minutes to make things interesting after looked like the Islanders were on their way to a rout and a one-sided victory. Islanders head coach Patrick Waugh was not thrilled with his team's performance, had some interesting quotes during his post-game media session, and it looks like the Islanders organization as a whole wasn't very happy despite coming away with a win, as earlier this afternoon, the Islanders placed Oliver Wahlstrom and Pierre Engvall on waivers, and you got to wonder if one or both of those guys possibly could be picked up by another club, or even our Chicago Blackhawks. We got to start with Oliver Wahlstrom, because those of you who are hockey fans are probably aware he was the 11th overall pick not all that long ago, back in 2018. Now 24 years old, he came onto the NHL scene and got off to a really good start, always known for his goal-scoring abilities, but has not been able to find much success ever since then. Total, he's got 71 points, 36 goals, and 35 assists in 220 career NHL games from 2020 up until this point in time for the New York Islanders. But it's really been a struggle for him these last couple of seasons. Only 2 goals through 27 games so far this season. Wahlstrom also only had 2 goals all of last year, and actually in 94 games since the start of the 2022-2023 campaign, he only has 11 goals total. Now, is that because of the style he's playing with the New York Islanders? Is that because he's kind of looking like a bust? I'm sure, it's probably both, but I do think because of his goal-scoring pedigree, even though we haven't seen it for a while or consistently whatsoever at the NHL level, because he was the 18th overall pick, because he's only 24 years old, and also because he's only under contract for the end of this season, will be an RFA at the end of this year, but only has $1 million AAV, I do think someone is going to take a chance on Oliver Wahlstrom. I'd be really surprised if someone doesn't. I don't think it's going to be the Chicago Blackhawks, though, but I don't think it's crazy. I think it would make sense if they did, just because it's a cheap second chance, and the Blackhawks are in a position where if Oliver Wahlstrom sucks, like, so what? We don't really have to play him. It's not like he was a Kyle Davidson draft pick that we had high hopes for. He's only got $1 million AAV. If things don't go well, you can cut ties with him at the end of the year. I know he's not someone who drives play. He's not really a good skater, doesn't have much playmaking. But and I'm not really even preaching for the Blackhawks to go and do it. I'm just making a case for it, because I could see it happening, mostly because of the position the Chicago Blackhawks are in. They're in a very why not type of situation. They could use offensive help. Whether they think Oliver Wahlstrom could provide offensive help is another question. But there are a lot of reasons why I could see Kyle Davidson ultimately taking a chance on a guy like Oliver Wahlstrom here for the remainder of the season, considering the position the Blackhawks are in. Pierre Engvall certainly isn't going to be an option for the Chicago Blackhawks. Only 28 years old, former 7th-round pick back in 2014 of the Toronto Maple Leafs, who has turned out a really nice career for himself. I got to give Engvall a lot of props. Grinding through the minor leagues, burst onto the scene for Toronto. signed a nice sheet with the New York Islanders, which has not gone very well for them, and probably why I don't see another team claiming Pierre Engvall off of waivers. Yeah, he's 6'5". He's a good skater. He has some goal-scoring prowess and can score in the dirty areas, even though that's not really his style. We saw him have 35 points, 15 goals, and 20 assists just a couple of years ago in 2021, 2022 for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and he also had 28 points, 10 goals, and 18 assists in 74 games last year for an Isles bunch that, doesn't put up a whole lot offensively. But he's only got 6 points, 3 goals, and 3 assists in 20 games this year. Has been healthy scratch. But the biggest kicker is that he's owed $3 million per year until the end of 2028. I don't think there's another team that wants to commit to 3 more years of Pierre Engvall at that price, even if they do think he could help. And yeah, being a 6'5" guy with wheels and some offensive abilities in the bottom six, yeah, that could be a help to the Chicago Blackhawks, but not for $3 million per year until the end of 2028. That ain't going to happen. I think a lot of NHL general managers are probably thinking the same. That's why I expect Pierre Engvall to clear. Oliver Wahlstrom is going to be the real interesting one, though. Again, not because of the numbers or what he's shown, just because he is a former first-round pick with some good goal-scoring upside, or at least he did. So we'll see what winds up happening if the Blackhawks or another of the 31 NHL clubs wind up claiming either of these two guys. But there was everything I have from a wild and polar opposite game that I thought we were going to get last night in Long Island. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, before I wrap things up, I'll talk about where we'll see Frank Nazar make his season debut in the Blackhawks lineup and a deeper dive on the New Jersey Devils. But first, I do got to talk real quick about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. And PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way for you to now play daily fantasy sports, because all you got to do is simply pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Do you think Connor Bedard's going to keep his hot streak going and score more than 0.5 goals when the Blackhawks take on the New Jersey Devils tomorrow? Or how about Jack Hughes for the Devils to record more than 1.5 points? You can now cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this hockey season when you and your crew run your game with PrizePicks. And one thing I really do like about PrizePicks is it's the only daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so that even if one of your players were to get injured, your lineups do still stay in play. So make sure to go and download the PrizePicks app and use the code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's the PrizePicks app with the code LOCKEDONNHL in all caps to get a free $50 when you put $5 down. PrizePicks, run your game. Before I go into my preview of Saturday afternoon's matchup against the New Jersey Devils, I do just want to talk to all of my audio listeners out there. I would really appreciate it if you could leave for this holiday season a review for Locked On Blackhawks. You can do that on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, wherever you may be listening to your podcast. But if you're a frequent or longtime listener and you enjoy what you're hearing or what you're watching on a daily basis, it would really mean the world to me if you could leave me a review on either Apple Podcasts or wherever you may be listening. Really appreciate all of you. But the Blackhawks wrap up their 3-game East Coast road trip tomorrow afternoon with a 12 p.m. Central Time puck drop bright and early against the New Jersey Devils, who are among the top teams in the NHL so far this year, currently second in the Metropolitan Division with a 19-10-3 record through their opening 32 games. They've played 5 games here so far in the month of December with a 3-1-1 record, and are coming off of a 3-1 win on Thursday night against the Los Angeles Kings. And by the way, I was scrolling through Game Time, one of our sponsors here on the Locked On Podcast Network, but also just the way that I've purchased tickets for legitimately not an ad, just how I've purchased my tickets for sporting events since I was back in high school. I was just curious. I was scrolling through Game Time. I wanted to see how much tickets were for Blackhawks Islanders last night between these two struggling offensive bunches. Could have gone and sat 11 rows off the glass for like $35. I was like, damn. Wish I had a private jet to fly to Long Island real quick. I probably would have been buying much more expensive tickets than that, though. But I did notice you could get 300 level tickets to Kings at Devils, which is like a legitimately good matchup. And like I said, the Devils, one of the best teams in the NHL, top teams in the Eastern Conference. Didn't look like there was all that much intrigue, because you could get like 300 level tickets for like $4 to go and see those two teams last night at the Prudential Center. Sure, tickets aren't going to be too expensive on Saturday night, as the lowly Chicago Blackhawks are on Saturday afternoon, I guess I should say, as the lowly Chicago Blackhawks come to town. But the Devils did best the Kings in that matchup last night, 3-1 at the Prudential Center in the third game of their current 5-game homestand. Getting to know the opponent a little bit more, though, basically what I got to say here about the New Jersey Devils is that they're good at hockey, and the Hawks need to be on their toes tomorrow. Devils are the top power play in the entire NHL, converting at a 31% rate through their opening 32 games. And oh yeah, they're also top 10 on the penalty kill as well, 9th while shorthanded at 81%. I thought the Blackhawks were a pretty good special teams bunch, but the New Jersey Devils really take it to another level. Hawks, like I said, are good though. 11th on the power play, 24% this year. Now up to 5th on the penalty kill at 83%. Continues to be such a strength for this team. Hawks PK is 27 for 29 now in their past 11 games dating back to November 19th, and have not, knock on wood, given up a power play goal in 6 games here in December. Face-offs for the Devils, they're 18th in the NHL league average at 50%. The Blackhawks, one of the worst, 31st at 43%. And that was a huge problem for them, as I guessed it was going to be against the Islanders last night. The top face-off team in the NHL is the Blackhawks, won 50 of 55 face-offs total. I know you don't ever expect rookie to get called up and be a solution at the faceoff top. Hopefully Frank Nazar can help win some more faceoffs for this team. The Devils, 7th in the NHL offensively in goals per game, 3.31. They're also 6th defensively, allowing 2.66 goals per game. So no real weaknesses here for this New Jersey bunch. Blackhawks are 30th on the offensive side, 2.45 goals per game. They are trended in the right direction, though. Unfortunately, trending a little bit in the wrong direction defensively, which will be a side effect of them generating more offensively under Anders Sorensen, 22nd in the NHL, allowing 3.17 goals per game. Diving into individual player stats for the Devils, Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, 2 of the top point producers in the entire NHL. Funny enough, Bratt, who I mean, a lot of people are aware of him in the NHL, but he's actually the leading point scorer for the Devils ahead of Jack Hughes at this point in time. Probably one of the more underrated players in the league, and us Blackhawks fans, only playing the Devils twice a year, don't really get a lot of good looks at him. He's 8th in the NHL with 39 points so far. Jack Hughes right behind him, 11th with 38 points. But the Devils also have 4 other players who are already above 20 points this year. Blackhawks only have 1. Nico Hischier has 27 points. Stefan Noesen has 22. Timo Meier has 20. Dougie Hamilton has 21. All of those guys already above 20 points. And taking a look at the projected lineup for the Devils, I think only Curtis Lazar is expected to miss this game for them in terms of their regular skaters. Jake Allen, the backup goaltender, is out. Looks like it's going to be Jacob Markstrom. Obviously, I'm recording this on Friday night, so there's no official confirmation at this point in time, but the Devils don't play. They have 2 off days after this game, so I figure they're going to go with their number 1, Jacob Markstrom, who's been really solid after signing a pretty big ticket with them in the offseason. Looking at the lines here for the Devils, Andre Palat, Jack Hughes, and Jesper Bratt serve as the top line. Timo Meier, Nico Hischier, and Dawson Mercer. What a spot for the young Dawson Mercer to be in on the Devils' second line. Paul Cotter, Eric Haula, and Stefan Noesen, who's been nice this year, make up their third line. Curtis McDermott down on the 4th. Forgot to check this before action. Someone let me know in the comment section down below. Curtis McDermott's a defenseman, right? Or am I absolutely losing my marbles? Are they just using a big boy on the 4th line, a la some old-time Joe Quenneville-styled hockey? Someone let me know in the comment section. But McDermott's on the 4th line, big boy regardless. Justin Dowling centering the 4th line. Admittedly, don't know who that is. Nate Bastian, I am familiar with, rounds things out for this forward group. Defensively, Brendan Dillon and Dougie Hamilton make up the top pairing. Jonas Siegenthaler and Kovacevic make up the second pairing. And then Luke Hughes, I should say, and Brett Pesce round things out defensively. Solid defensive group for the Devils. And then, as I mentioned, Jacob Markstrom figures to get the start in net for the Blackhawks. We did see them practice here today on Friday prior to this game at noon tomorrow. Philip Kurashev does stick with Connor Bedard on the top line, but as I talked about earlier with Frank Nazar centering the second line, that has bumped up Ryan Donato to the Blackhawks top line, and a guy who shoots the puck at will, which I absolutely love, gets to the dirty areas, can win board battles, and get Connor Bedard more puck touches. I'm all in favor of getting Ryan Donato a look up on the top line over Ilya Mikheyev. Taylor Hall, Tyler Bertuzzi remain on the second line. Frank Nazar jumping in at the center position. And I think this is an excellent spot for Frank Nazar to be in, man. Two guys who have been playing their best hockey of the season here these past few games are finally starting to find their mojo, starting to find their confidence. And I think both Taylor Hall and Tyler Bertuzzi have done a good job of making plays happen on the forecheck, winning one-on-one battles, winning loose pucks, and finding each other with open space. I think Frank Nazar bringing some speed down the middle is going to be a really nice fit for him here on this offensive-minded second line, and that's what we want him to be focusing on right here, right now. Yeah, we want him to be reliable defensively, but he's not going to be demanded to do as much on the defensive side of things and have as much responsibilities under Anders Sorensen as he would have under Luke Richardson. So I think that's a really good spot for Frank Nazar to start out at. I do wonder, though, if that line, I wonder if Anders Sorensen is considered going Hall, Bedard, Bertuzzi at all because of the success those two guys have found, but that probably limits the depth in terms of productive offensive players that they have going right here, right now. But I do wonder if, it's a good spot for Frank Nazar to be in, and you definitely want to develop him properly, but you also want to capitalize on Connor Bedard starting to play his best hockey of the year, and we're still having that rotation, revolving door of line mates for him. No one's been able to solidify a spot there. Would really like to see Lukas Reichel get an opportunity at some point. Nick Foligno, Jason Dickinson, Ilya Mikheyev gets bumped down from the first line to the third line to make up that defensive trio. And then Pat Maroon, Lukas Reichel, and Teuvo Teravainen make up the Blackhawks' fourth line. Not a healthy scratching, though, for Craig Smith, as he was not on the ice this morning for practice because of a back injury. And Sorensen told the media that he's not going to be playing tomorrow against the Devils. So Joey Anderson going to be healthy scratch. Craig Smith, unfortunately injured. Doesn't sound like it's going to be anything long-term, though. But Teuvo Teravainen getting a look on the fourth line. Reichel and Smith have had really good chemistry with one another, so curious how that line goes about things and how they fare with Teuvo getting a little bit of a look. Maybe an opportunity with those two guys gets Teuvo sparked a little bit here, as he's just been ice cold and has not been making a lot of the right reads or the right plays, the simple plays that you expect a guy like Teuvo Teravainen, who's getting paid what he's being paid to make. Definitely don't like seeing him on the fourth line, but hey, maybe it's a little bit of a look in the mirror for Teuvo Teravainen, and hopefully he can start playing better and find a good stretch like Hall and Bertuzzi have. Defensively, figure it's going to be the same for the Blackhawks. Vlasic and Kaiser leading things off up top. Allen and Murphy as the second pairing. And then Kevin Korchinski and TJ Brody as the third pairing. Korchinski probably not as strong as his season debut on Monday last night against the Islanders, but still a fine game. It's not like it was filled with defensive blunders or anything, and he still just looks like a much more confident player. Alec Martinez, by the way, has been placed on injured reserve. That got kind of swept under the rug today with all the talk about Frank Nazar being called up, but Martinez on IR, meaning he's going to be out for probably at least a week or two, and that could extend Kevin Korchinski's stint up here in the NHL. Korchinski's up, Frank Nazar's up, we got Kaiser and Nolan Allen. Yeah, it makes it a lot more fun for us here at the NHL scene, and there are no complaints for me in that department because I've been begging for fun from this Blackhawks team for the last 3 years, and that 5-4 loss they had to the Islanders last night, yeah, they lost, but hey, at least it was kind of fun, and their style of play, it's just so much more promising. But it sounds like Kevin Korchinski could possibly be sticking around for another couple of weeks. It's going to be a fun stretch here for the Chicago Blackhawks. Going to be interesting to see what happens with the Rockford IceHogs, though. And speaking of the Rockford IceHogs, Arvid Soderblom, I figure is going to get the start tomorrow against the Devils, but with the Blackhawks having a back-to-back and returning on Sunday to take on the New York Islanders once again for the second time in 4 days, I think that's when Drew Commesso is going to make his first NHL start. Not his NHL debut, because we saw him in relief for Arvid Soderblom last night. Not how we wanted to see Commesso get his first NHL appearance, but Blackhawks, I don't think are going to have any choice but to start him on Sunday at home against an Islanders bunch that, even though they had 5 on Thursday, still not the strongest offensive team. I feel like that's a good time for Drew Commesso to take that leap in the water and make that leap from the AHL level with Rockford to his first NHL start here with the Blackhawks. No update on Peter Mrazek as of this point in time. So, I figure it's going to be Soderblom on Saturday, Commesso on Sunday. Would love for the Hawks to get a couple of wins here this weekend. That would be absolutely great. Everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks. That's going to wrap things up on the show here today. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. You can go and find me on X at Jack Bushman 2. Be sure to check out my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey. That way you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube if you haven't done so already. 100% free, won't cost you anything, and really does help me out tremendously. 5-star review if you're someone who's listening and frequently listens or is a longtime listener of the show and enjoys what they constantly listen to. Please make sure to give me a review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your weekends. I will be having an episode dropping following the Blackhawks and Devils contest tomorrow afternoon. There's just too much going on to not have an episode come out. So until then, everyone, enjoy the rest of your Friday nights or Saturday mornings, whenever you listen to this. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.